Before I begin talking about today's topic, let me just say this. None of these stories with me are personal. I am totally um, neutral when it comes to politics. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. I'm a registered independent voter. So I'm one of the swing voters that sits back and I listen, I watch, and I analyze. I've been a Democrat, I've been a Republican. I don't want to be a part of either one of the parties. But I will say this. I'm going to be talking about a lot of different topics, and some of them may appear and seem to be controversial at times. And I'm only reporting what has already been reported and what's already been covered. Basically, it is a rehash of important information. Now, if there's a particular topic or subject matter that you would like for me to discuss, I keep telling y'all to drop me a comment in the comment section, and I will take the time to do the research. Now, with the political season upon us, each candidate, regardless of their affiliation of party, is going to be given equal time, equal coverage, uh, proper respect. It doesn't matter with me what affiliation um, they are. I'm just going to tell it the way it is. And if some of their fans or admirers or supporters don't like some of the things that are being discussed, then talk to your candidates. Tell them to either change their position on some things, tell the truth regarding some things, or just stop making blunders all the time. Because that way, we can get down to the facts. And if given the opportunity, I'll become one of those pundits as well with a nightly show. And if I come on television every night, believe me, I'm going all the way in, baby. I'm not even going to play with it. Having said that, this is Tyrone Bowman Tonight. I'm Tyrone Bowman. In fight to lead America's future, America's battle rages over its racist past. DeSantis defends his state's depiction of slavery. Biden bashes book bans and honors Emmett Till. According to the Washington Post, the 2024 presidential race anomaly, a battle to shape the country's future, is increasingly being consumed by a roiling debate over re-examining, redefining, and reimagining its past. Over the past 10 days, candidates from across the political spectrum have discussed the intricacies of slavery, Reconstruction, military desegregation, and lynching. A rare moment in modern presidential politics when Black history has become a more dominant subject than more traditional topics like taxes or crime. On July 21, GOP presidential candidate Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican, defended his state's new history standards, which suggest slavery had benefits for some enslaved people. Hours earlier, Vice President Harris had traveled to Jacksonville, Florida, to condemn those standards as, quote, propaganda, close quote. 4 days later, President Biden proclaimed a national monument for Emmett Till, a black teen brutally murdered in 1955, using the occasion to condemn, quote, darkness and denialism, close quote, from those seeking to bury history. Other Republican campaigns, including that of former President Donald Trump, have since entered the fray attacking DeSantis, while espousing many of the same ideas he has pushed about how history should be framed on issues of race. The political and pedagogical firefight incapacitates a broader debate that has encrypted across the country about what to teach about race, history, and the intersection of the two. It underscores how the nation's metastasizing cultural wars, now firmly ensconced in the nation's classrooms, have brought in to strip Americans of a shared sense of history, leaving many to view the past through the filter of contemporary polarization. Most of our prior arguments were about who to include in the story, not the story itself, said Jonathan Zimmerman, a University of Pennsylvania professor who studies the history of education. America has lost a shared national narrative. The conflict has intensified in recent years as America's historical record on race has increasingly become a battleground for partisan squabbling. It has cost educators their jobs and forced others to self-censor, sent the textbook publishing industry into meltdown, and reshaped how students learn about race and racism in classrooms. As the tensions have spilled from local school board meetings to state legislatures to the White House, and now the campaign trail, history has become a defining topic for contenders angling for the presidency. DeSantis, whose anti-woke agenda has put Florida at the forefront of revising how black history is taught, has come under fire for supporting a set of standards for middle school instruction that includes teaching how slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit. As DeSantis has tried to clarify his position amid a broader campaign reset this past week, the bipartisan condemnation offered an indication that his push may be running into turbulence. Senator Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, who has hailed his African American family's journal, quote, from cotton to Congress, close quote, while extolling the American history that made such upward mobility possible, condemned DeSantis' argument about the supposed benefits received by enslaved people. There's no silver lining in slavery, said Scott, who is also seeking the GOP presidential nomination, suggesting that DeSantis should consider clarifying his position. People have bad days sometimes to regret what they say. Harris, usually on the opposite side of Scott on matters of racial history and justice, also chastised the Florida governor. Shortly after learning of the standards, she made an impromptu trip to Jacksonville to slam what she called revisionist history being peddled in classrooms. This is unnecessary to debate whether enslaved people benefited from slavery. Are you kidding me? She said July 21, 2 days after the Florida Department of Education unveiled its new standards. Let us not be distracted by what they're trying to do, which is to create unnecessary debate to divide our country. DeSantis' aides snapped back against his critics in both parties, alleging that politicians had taken the proposal out of context and noting that other educational programs also say enslaved people develop skills that they use after the Civil War, at least those who survived slavery and attained some measure of freedom. The spectacle riveted James Whitfield, a black Texas principal who recently lost his job for allegedly promoting critical race theory, which some Republicans have turned into a catcall terms for lessons about race deemed politically motivated. The furor over the depiction of slavery recalled the competing visions of America and its history that he says led to his dismissal. It just makes me think of how divided we are, Whitfield said. Those divisions have only grown sharper as both parties seek to rally their bases by defending their preferred takes on U.S. history. While Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin was able to parlay Angus over schoolroom instruction into a GOP victory in 2021, polling suggests that the views on black history embraced by DeSantis and other Republicans may be out of step with the broader electorate. Just over half of all adults and about 3/4 of black adults said they were either extremely or very concerned about states opposing public schools from teaching about the history of racism in America, according to a Washington Post IPSOS poll conducted this spring. Still, the partisan split is pulling Republicans, still the partisan split in the polling, Republicans are far more likely than Democrats to say the legacy of slavery does not affect black people today. For example, suggests why the issue has become a dominant theme in the contest to secure the GOP presidential nomination. 18 largely Republican led states have passed laws or enacted policies since 2021 that circumscribes what educators can say about race, history, and racism, according to an Education Week tally. Many of the measures are broad, outlining instruction that could make children feel uncomfortable due to the color of their skin. A handful of states, most notably Florida, are scrutinizing or rejecting classes and textbooks of what conservatives charge are inappropriate mentions of race. This January, Florida repudiated a pilot advanced placement course in African American history, alleging that it lacked educational value. And some blue states are passing laws that take educational race and history in the opposite direction. Since 2019, at least 4 reliably Democratic states have enacted legislation mandating classes in African American, Latino, and Puerto Rican studies. It also portends hopeless bifurcation. Bifurcation. Zimmerman said, suggesting that America is becoming a place where what students learn about the country's past will depend whether they live in a conservative or liberal state. Several of the candidates vying for the presidency have pledged to use the power of the executive branch to create new national standards for how school children are taught about race. Trump, for example, has warned about pink-haired communists teaching our kids and pledged to cut federal funding for schools that teach critical race theory or other inappropriate topics about racism. To my brothers and sisters out there that live in Florida, if you don't like the way that they're going with their educational teachings, take your children out of those schools. Save your money and either start your own charter school or send them to privately owned black schools. You know, HBCUs are becoming extremely popular now. Yeah. I bet you wish you had gone there now, don't you? Think about it. While debates over how to teach American history are not new, pressure from liberal activists in the 1950s and the 1960s led to the inclusion of more women and people of color in school classrooms, for example. The fight has become particularly fraught in recent years, as a growing number of scholars and politicians seek to draw a more direct links between the past and the present. Much of the fight can be traced to the early days of Trump's first presidential campaign, when his nostalgic "Make America Great Again" pledge emerged against the backdrop of a burgeoning racial reckoning sparked by the Black Lives Matter movement. Conservatives contend that instruction on race and history has shifted since then to reflect liberal ideologies and values in ways inappropriate to the schoolhouse. They have advanced returning to a more traditional way of teaching American history, one less critical of the nation's past flaws and less explicit about linking current inequalities to past injustices. In Florida this year, volunteers for the Right Leading Florida Cities Alliance spent weeks combing through social studies textbooks before presenting their findings to the state education department in a 29-page report. The group's members wrote that textbooks forced or focused too much on slavery and the struggles of Native Americans and black people and did not mention contributions affiliated with white people. Are you serious? Come on. When I was in school, all they talked about was white folk. White folk, white folk. And that's why I made a decisive decision for myself to stop listening to those teachers who were just teaching white propaganda. And I went to the library and read every book in my library for myself that I could find about us as a people. Keith Flogg, co-founder and CEO of the Florida Citizens Alliance, said his group's analysis proves modern-day education means teaching our kids that our country has been very oppressive. Speaking of DeSantis, he added, it's the reason we're supportive of what the governor has been doing. Well, this article goes on, and I'm tired of reading it about that one. I'm Tyrone Bowman. Never surrender, never quit.